So here we are, the October 2018 Providence Geeks with Lori Bonynge, director of the SIMULIA Innovation Lab. And SIMULIA is a longtime Rhode Island company, 40
years.
40 years.
We started 40 years ago in a small house with like 3 employees in Scituate. I wasn't there then. I joined about 20 years ago.
What were they doing in What were they doing in the small house in Scituate?
They were creating engineering software to do simulations, in this case structural simulations, so that you could take a design that you conceived of and test it in a virtual space before you actually build your first prototype. And that gives you a lot of insight into the actual mechanics and the behavior of that, whatever it is you're modeling. Go ahead.
So you're kind of like a wind tunnel, but it's virtual.
It could be a wind tunnel, it's virtual. It could be anything. It could, looking at, say, a cell phone. You want to make sure your cell phone is not going to break when you drop it. So we can test that and optimize the design of the cell phone to avoid breakage when you drop it.
Now, this has to start somewhere and with a design. And so some years ago, I don't remember how many, you became part of the Dassault family.
We did,
And
yep.
they're known for many things, but 2 of those products, CATIA and SolidWorks, are
Yes.
CAD packages, so
Yep.
people can go in there, design, make solid models, and then what do they do next?
Because every simulation starts with the geometry, so you have to, in your virtual space, create the shape. Then when it's starting to think about doing simulations, you would then take that and specify what the material behavior is, and then what the loading conditions are, what environment is that supposed to function in, and what are the functional parameters. And then from there we can predict how it's actually going to behave in the physical world. So we're creating this, we call it a 3D experience twin, but it's a virtual twin of whatever product or scenario that you want to test before you actually produce it.
And now you mentioned that you've gone into other types of simulation, fluid dynamics.
Yep,
and
so we
all
can
these...
combine structural simulation, electromagnetic simulation, and fluid simulation. So for example, we have a really detailed simulation of a human heart, where you've got the structures of the tissues which are contracting, but that tissue contraction is based on an electromagnetic pulse.
Wow.
So we solve for the electromagnetic pulse traveling through that tissue. As that pulse travels by, it contracts in a non-uniform way, because human tissue does not behave in one direction in the same way in the other direction. So it's a very detailed material model. As that contraction migrates through, it's of course contracting and squishing the fluid. So then we also have to model the fluid behavior. And by doing that, we can take that virtual model and look at how can we optimize our treatments for particular diseases. How can we design the best heart valve replacement, for example? How do we then insert that heart valve? And we can do all those tests virtually, which is a lot better than obviously testing on the patient.
So you mentioned all this, and it's got me wondering, how do we know that we're not living inside a SIMULIA simulation?
That's an excellent question. You've been watching some really great movies that are similar to the ones that I enjoy. That is
look for the trademark symbol?
Bigger question
yeah,
than I can answer.
Okay. So if people want to learn more about your team and what you do, where do they go?
So our web address is 3ds.com, and if you go to 3ds.com/SIMULIA, SIMULA, then you will get directly to the simulation portion of our website, so you can see kind of the interesting simulations that we do.
All right. Well, Lori, thanks so much for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you.